Ice-T was still performing at the Radio nightclub, also known as Radiotron, when he was approached to write a song for an upcoming film, already gaining press attention for the people who were attached to it, as well as its subject matter. Actor and filmmaker Dennis Hopper was on the comeback trail with movies such as Hoosiers in 1986, when Sean Penn, a next-gen actor with a red-hot career thanks to movies such as 1982's Fast Times at Ridgemont High and 1983's Bad Boys, and then married to Ice-T's labelmate Madonna, approached him with a script. It would be the first time that Hopper directed a picture since 1969's Easy Rider, which, among other things, is known for proving that low-budget or independent productions can be box office successes. Back to the script. A pair of policemen battling against cough syrup-selling gang members in Chicago felt cartoonish to Hopper. He preferred the illegal substance of choice to be cocaine and the locale to be South Central Los Angeles, just to make the script more realistic. And being someone who grew up in South Central Los Angeles and chronicled the area's gang life on wax, Ice-T seems to be the ideal person to deliver the title track and lead single for the movie, which was entitled Colors. Ice-T watched the movie as inspiration for the song he was going to write. He decided on a first-person approach, put himself in the shoes, or Chuck Taylor's, of a gang member to make it feel more real to the listener. Upon listening to the lyrics, his producer, Afrika Islam, thought it sounded like a pro-gang song. But Ice countered that people don't necessarily join a gang because they're evil, but rather because they have immediate needs to fulfill. Think of it as being on one side of a war against the other faction. Who is in the right or in the wrong? Neither side cares, apart from their own cause.
Colors.
No MC in history has made a gangster rap song as physiological as Colors, which was made available on its namesake soundtrack album on April 26, 1988. A song like that had to come from someone as weathered as Ice-T, backed by the spooky synthesized thump of a beat from Afrika Islam to inspire dread. Ice is, to paraphrase him, a nightmare-walking, psychopath-talking gangster, using an endless stream of metaphors and similes to coldly describe his murderous resolve across 4 verses, but intersperses them with interludes that reveals that he feels trapped in the life he chose. Colors, named after the colors that the Bloods and the Crips wear and represent, is the link between celebration and nihilism and forewarning and regret, the gray area between light and darkness. It's the ultimate reality rap anthem. Reality rap would have its greatest proponent in Ice-T, because another force was on its way to pervert it into a different form. Colors was barely 4 months old when NWA released Straight Outta Compton. It might have not been an initial success, but it was destined to be, due to the willingness of its members to go further with lyrical shock value than OG Ice-T himself. There was also their leader, Eazy-E, the guy who had cut the same Boys in the Hood record that shared the Schoolie D template with Ice-T's 6 in the Morning. Eazy had the advantage of investing proceeds from his drug sales into his record label venture, Ruthless Records, and, with the assistance of his manager, Jerry Heller, landed a distribution deal with Priority Records for NWA's wider distribution. Compared to Eazy, Ice-T was a mere employee on the major. But Ice-T was no drug dealer or a kid who was still in high school. At almost 30 years of age, ancient by hip-hop standards then, he was about 5 to 10 years older than any of the members of NWA. And he had a greater wealth of experience in the streets, compared to some NWA members who were not even street kids. Ice was no shock artist. Rather, he was a gangster rapper with a conscience, a stickler for keeping it real. He was going to stick to a script to maximize his power. Puns intended. Located next to MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, Radiotron was integral to the professional progress of Ice-T. It was where he performed his first gigs, became involved in the Breakin' movies, as well as the preceding Breakin' and Entering, one of the first documentaries on hip-hop, and met Madonna and became her label mate at Sire Records when the company's execs chanced upon him. Radiotron is also where Ice-T met Darlene Ortiz. She was raised in Corona, a city in Riverside County, part of the Inland Empire and about 50 miles away from LA, where she was now at for her big break as a B-girl and breakdancer. Darlene and Ice-T became so close that the latter referred to the former as his wife. About 2 or 3 years after they met, Ice-T was on the verge of releasing his debut album, Rhyme Pays. Famed photographer Glenn E. Friedman wanted to go for an album cover that screams Cali. Palm trees, lowriders, and women in bikinis was his idea. Ice-T singularized that vision. A palm tree stands prominently in the center background. He is on the wheel of a convertible, and right next to him, standing on the front passenger seat, is a scantily clad Darlene with a gold chain adorned with a pistol pendant around her neck. Just like that, Darlene Ortiz became the first cover girl of hip-hop, and she and Ice-T became the culture's archetypal power couple, long before Jay-Z and Beyoncé made it a thing. Ice even joked that she was getting more fan mail than he was. So it only made sense that when it was time for the photo session for Ice-T's sophomore album, with Friedman once again in charge, she had to be back. The approach was even more risque than the previous one. Darlene, still with the pistol pendant necklace, is now photographed from head to toe, wearing a one-piece white bathing suit that reveals or accentuates more of her curves and assets, with red pumps that elevate her and a sawed-off shotgun in her right hand. DJ Evil E, who featured alongside Ice-T and Darlene on the first album cover, is back, flanking Ice on his left while Darlene stands to his right. Anyone who purchased the second album could flip it over to see that both DJ and MC are hiding away a shotgun and an Uzi, respectively, behind them, as well as ogle over more bare Darlene flesh. The mainstream press, ever prudish toward rap, lambasted the album cover. But the intended effect worked. The new album gained attention from a buying public eager for some cutting-edge content. And Darlene Ortiz, even more so than Ice-T or DJ Evil E, visually provided that edge. But ultimately, the music itself had to be good, right?
Rhyme Pays was the name of the album, but that was #1. This is #2. The posse grew. We're gonna break through.
Power was released on September 13th, 1988, and it arrived with a concept not quite fully explored in hip-hop. Throughout the 80s, rap was undergoing the transition from singles to albums. But even the album format was less of an artistic statement than a collection of songs. With albums like Power, there was going to be a grand introduction to a book-ending device that MCs within the next 2 decades were going to deploy to thematically and structurally glue their songs together: the intro and the outro. Power's intro begins where Rhyme Pays left off. A poetic recital at the end of the song squeezed the trigger over the same tubular bell sampling instrumental used at the beginning of the album. The first track of Rhyme Pays represents the first time an intro was explicitly designed as such. But the first track of Power represents the first official standalone intro. And in this one, the stage is set to reveal the utter dopeness of MC Ice-T.
Rhyme Pays, man. Play that record again, man. That's the stupid stuff, man. Turn the tape
Ice-T
over.
vocally
Yo,
plays
boy, I
2
got
roles.
you, Ice.
Homeboy 1, a regular dude who loves the Rhyme Pays tape so much that he wants to turn it over to side A to play it again, and Homeboy 2, who shows up with the new Ice-T album, Power, and even entices Homeboy 1 by showing a half-naked Darlene on the cover. Already a huge fan of Ice-T, Homeboy 1 gets overzealous, there's a tussle, a gunshot, and there's Homeboy 2 on the floor, severely wounded. And instead of calling the paramedics to render assistance, Homeboy 1 turns around to insert Power into the tape deck, side A, and press play.
The album cover was called Power. And I was dealing with all the different power plays. You have the powers of sex. They use sex to sell car mufflers, sex to sell Bayer aspirin and anything, And I was dealing with the powers of weapons because I heard our president say, military strength equals power equals peace.
The term peace through strength is a term most commonly associated with Ronald Reagan, under whose administration the Cold War began to wind down as the Soviet Union lost ground with the arms race. It's a foreign policy strategy best described as using military power to discourage aggression and maintain peace, and it dates as far back as the Roman Emperor Hadrian, demonstrated by establishing permanent fortifications such as Hadrian's Wall. The piece through strength that Ice-T exercises in power is with his comparatively original gangsta status, the ultimate West Coast solo rap luminary. In the title track, over 5 rapid, blistering verses, Ice lists his accomplishments, brandishes his street cred, and touts the benefits of monetary gain. And to fuel Ice's lyrics with even more power, Afrika Islam stitches together a choral horn-splattered sample of James Brown's "I Don't Want Nobody to Give Me Nothing, Open Up the Door and I'll Get It Myself," and the rumbling bass of the Jimmy Castor Bunch's "It's Just Begun," with a rhythmic bed produced from his latest acquisition, the Roland TR-909. By that point, the 909's predecessor, the Roland TR-808, had established itself as the drum machine of choice for hip-hop producers, and that's because of its ability to produce kicks that sounded like bass lines. It's a booming sound that became a requirement of the aggressiveness of hardcore rap, as well as the progenitor of the boom bap sound that began to emerge in the late 80s and peaked in the East Coast in the 90s. But Afrika Islam and Ice-T wanted to create a sonic experience distinctive from what was happening in hip-hop at the time. While the 808 produces a boom, the 909 produces a punch, a sound that made the machine more favored by dance producers because of the pulsating effect it creates. It also helps that the 909, unlike the 808, can be synchronized with other devices via MIDI connection, and Afrika Islam capitalized upon that functionality by pairing the 909 with the SP1200 sampler and the Roland TR-303 bass synthesizer. The result is a slicker and slightly more baleful soundscape than virtually anything on a rap record at that time. Whether that was going to age well was anyone's guess, but then Afrika Islam's beats felt appropriate backing the imagery of a light-skinned hardcore rapper with slicked-out hair and a mind primed to let loose rhymes of reality. Rhyme Pace was already at 500,000 copies sold, an indication that a lot more people were tuning in to Ice-T. His homeboys on the streets may be making more money than his rap peers, or so he claimed, but it seemed that he now had to take this rap thing more seriously. If there's any record on power that best encapsulates that mindset, it had to be "I'm Your Pusher," the album's first single, which was released on August 23, 1988. It's not what one might think. Ice-T is concerned with pushing dope 12-inch records rather than pushing actual dope. The song's theme is harnessed by the chorus, which is an interpolation of Pusher Man, one of the tracks that soul music legend Curtis Mayfield helmed for the gold-certified Superfly soundtrack album back in 1972. "I'm Your Pusher" flips the lyrics of a drug dealer's unrepentant destruction disguised as a friendship into a chorus that showcases a record merchant guiding the potential listener to the best stuff that hip-hop has to offer. It's a fun and brilliant metaphor for the power, pun intended, of music, rather than drugs, to make people feel good. Plus, a punchy and sinister beat doesn't hurt.
I'm the kingpin when the wax spins. Crack a smack or take you to a show in. You don't
"I'm Your
need
Pusher" also contains the first shot Ice-T took against a contemporary of his, Out East. In 1988, no solo MC was bigger than LL Cool J, the Kangol hat-wearing Queens native only a few years removed from his teens, who had nevertheless amassed 2 platinum-certified albums and 2 top 40 hits. Those were impressive achievements for a rapper then, but considering the growing social consciousness within hip-hop, that wasn't enough. Granted, if you had Ice-T tell it, it wasn't that deep. He considered LL the top dog of the East. He considered himself the top dog of the West, so in the traditional competitive nature of hip-hop, he had to take him out. And no, not on a date. But Ice needed a pretext to paint himself as the hero in contrast with LL as the villain, and in "I'm Your Pusher," it was clear that he had found it.
got some of that LL Cool J. Nah, man, I don't want none of that, man. You can keep that, man.
With numbers like "Rock the Bells" and "I'm Bad," LL Cool J had established himself as the king of brag rap. But in an era of emergent acts such as Boogie Down Productions and Public Enemy, who appeared to raise the consciousness of Black Americans toward enhancing their current social status. LL was beginning to sound out of place. Ice-T belonged to the camp of BDP and PE, topically exploring the lives of Black Americans in and around South Central Los Angeles, using his experiences to weave tales of caution and pro-action within a downtrodden yet resilient race. Power showcases Ice-T beginning to peak as one of rap's greatest storytellers. In addition to Colors and I'm Your Pusher, there's Drama, which throbs with Coral 303 synths while Ice takes the listener on a first-person journey of an armed robber who is eventually betrayed by one of his crew members. His description of life in the pen is especially chilling.
You're just a number, another piece of tough meat. Killers and robbers are all you greet. Act soft, you will get beat.
Similar to Drama's theme of karmic retribution is Soul on Ice, a spoken word tale that conjures influences of Iceberg Slim, Dolomite Flicks, and Ice-T's brief spell with Pimpin'. Ice is the weathered hustler and player about to hang up his mink coat and 9mm for good, and he has a grand send-off planned, while someone else is planning to make that send-off permanent, in more ways than one. High Rollers, the album's second single that was released in January 1989, and which uses that dark drum rumble of Edwin Starr's Easin' In that Irv Gotti and Lil Rob would use for DMX's Crime Story a decade later, is Ice-T at his darkest. He details the ill-gotten gains of the titular antagonists, sometimes aided by corrupt cops, while warning the listener that nothing good can eventually come out of such a lifestyle. He also points to those who continue to be obtuse about the intent of his rhymes.
They'll say I'm glamorizing the hustling hood, and a record like this can do no good.
Radio stations were not exactly best buddies with Ice-T. It took about 5 years to get his first charting single, Colors, and that was lucky enough to be tied to the soundtrack for a film that relaunched Dennis Hopper's career as a director, as well as earned a measure of critical and commercial success. Colors made it as far as number 70 on the Billboard Hot 100. But radio play still remained sparse. Ice-T's street tales were too extreme for Middle America, or at least if that were left to radio programmers across the country. Even Black radio stations preferred to go with something that was, comparatively speaking, safe. If the aforementioned verse from High Rollers is a slap, Radio Suckers is a series of jabs and uppercuts, laced with a choral sample of Public Enemy's Rebel Without a Cause. Ice-T declares that he isn't censoring his raps for anyone, not for the press, not for the Los Angeles Police Department, not for the fans, not for the Federal Communications Commission, and definitely not for the radio stations.
Play it on your tape deck, feel the effect. If you can't take the heat, eject.
So, back to LL. Merely bragging about your skills equated to falling short of your people, a stance that Ice-T makes very clear with a verse in The Syndicate.
How many times on one album can you say you're deaf? I'm bad. Yo, punk, say your breath.
The Syndicate is also notable for marking the blossoming of Ice-T and Afrika Islam's Rhyme Syndicate productions. Originally set up as a production unit, Rhyme Syndicate by 1988 had expanded into a posse of sorts, similar to what was happening with the Juice Crew in New York. On the track are two core Rhyme Syndicate members. Like Afrika Islam, Donald Lamont, better known as Donald D, was a member of the Universal Zulu Nation, and he would have his own solo debut album a few months later. Henry Garcia, or Hen G, was Evil E's brother. Donald D would show up again, this time on a compilation that showcased more of the Rhyme Syndicate's members and affiliates, including a guy who went on to get everybody out of their seats and jump around. Power is not only about your street or lyrical prowess, it's also about the ability to uplift those around you. Of course, gangsters have fun too. Ice-T has his obligatory sex song in Power, Girls LGBNAF, an acronym that doubles as a euphemism and epitomizes the Iceman's growing vulgarity, as well as serves as a third jab at LL Cool J. Ain't no I Need Love going on here. Grand Larceny and Personal have Ice-T go brutalist with his braggadocio, and Heartbeats takes everyone back to the simpler days of Radiotron and Breakin', with Evil E being the center of attention and beautifully underlined by two different sections of War's track of the same name.
Once again, my friends, it's time to rock it till the party ends. Rhyming with time and it's evilly let's the records being killed.
Ice-T was getting better on the mic. His pacing and dexterity were improving, as evidenced by tracks such as Heartbeat and Personal, which has him speed up without him stumbling.
Jam is directed to all of those who expected from me to Kobe rejected, but now I'm highly respected. Now that is infected with dollars.
And Ice-T had no problem going beyond normal time to be more effective with his rhymes, which frequently spread out to 4 or 5 verses. It had been a common Ice device. After all, the album version of 6 in the Morning has 10 verses. But Power has a greater sense of editing than his previous work. Ice's freewheeling approach to songwriting structure, multiple verses occasionally strewn with interludes in addition to hooks or choruses, still kept the album at 13 tracks and 48 minutes, a remarkable achievement that's not often heralded for an already remarkable album. So, it's not surprising that when the outro rolls in, with Homeboy 2 still reeling on the floor, possibly mortally wounded, Homeboy 1 didn't seem to care about calling the paramedics.
Well, second thought, let me jam this tape just one more time.
Commercially, Power was a vast improvement over Rhyme Pays. Within 2 months of its release, it had peaked at number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100, a far better position than its immediate predecessor. It also took 4 months to be certified gold, rather than the 4 years it took Rhyme Pays to get its gold certification. And thanks to its growing stature over the years, it would eventually go platinum, becoming Ice-T's best-selling album. Despite the strong sales of Power, Ice-T was adamant about maintaining his artistic and ideological integrity. At a time when the LA rap scene was being hard-edged enough to release clean versions of albums to gain radio play and stronger sales, Ice chose to keep availability of his album at its original explicit version. And in addition to the album promotional tactic of a nationwide tour, Ice-T went to public schools to tell students about his past and present to dissuade them from a life of crime. He even testified before the Congressional Black Caucus in Washington, D.C. regarding the issue of gang activity. With a fairly mainstream profile and a strong measure of conscience, Ice-T was the ideal ambassador of a style that would unintentionally earn a name that became quite the confusing descriptor. But in perhaps the most classic album-stacked year in hip-hop history, it's easy to place Power in the lower end. Afrika Islam and Ice-T might have thought they were onto something innovative by relying on 909s and 303s, and the soul and funk samples smattered across the album give the beat some flesh. Plus, there's a kinetic crisp to some of the beats, with standouts that include the dingin' rock rage of Personal and the booming arrival of the title track. But a lot of the production now sounds teeny and flat, especially next to other great albums of that year, such as Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, EPMD's Strictly Business, Ultra Magnetic MC's Critical Beatdown, and yes, NWA's Straight Outta Compton. Let's not even get into lyrical technique. Power is no long-lived decaying or follow the leader. And wouldn't it have been cool for colors to be included somewhere in the album?
Okay, this record is called I'm Your Pusher. This is about selling drugs, right? It's about getting high off what, music? Oh, beat.
Nevertheless, you're going to be hard-pressed picking a greater reality rap album than Power, except if it's from somewhere else in Ice-T's catalog. There's an undeniable allure with Power, bursting with pulsating, novel-like detail that seems to straddle the line between glamorization and condemnation, but ultimately points to dire consequences of the unrepentant hood life. It's a skill that would become less frequently practiced, starting with the rise of NWA. But such neglect has only helped to amplify Power as one of rap's earliest concept albums, overt or implied. Another amplifier? That cover. Darlene Ortiz will continue to stick around as Ice-T's ride-or-die chick, appearing in both music videos for the album's singles, and even providing a son in 1991. But about 17 years after they first met, according to Darlene, the end came unexpectedly, not with a conversation, but through a two-way pager. But she had already made her mark. Power bears one of the best-known album covers in hip-hop history, as well as the subculture's greatest audio-visual alignment. It's venerated enough for Darlene to recreate her pose for a King magazine cover to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the album in 2008. It's venerated enough for West Coast stalwart Kendrick Lamar to recreate its imagery for his Squabble Up music video in 2024. And it's venerated enough for LL Cool J, even in his response to Ice-T's barbs with To the Brick of Dawn in 1990, to admit to what fans across the country and the world were doing with Darlene's titillating exposure.
I took the cover right home to the bathroom.
Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you in the next video.